we're live.
Stand by to the sky if you can. Down into the world, children of the sun. Children of the sun.
All right, welcome Facebook, welcome YouTube, welcome Twitch. Oh, no, you know what? We had a technical difficulty today. We are on the radio station's Facebook page, we are on Twitch, and we are on Sacred Breath's Facebook page. We couldn't get the YouTube page for the radio station, but I'll cross-post. All right. Boom. And I hope you guys are ready to dance the limits of the imagination and maybe get in closer touch with the sound of your own heartbeat, because that's what we are all about here on Children of the Sun. So if you're looking for that, you have found the place. We are broadcasting here from beautiful St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands, the turquoise waters of the Caribbean, every Friday from 12:30 to 2:30. So want to say welcome to Chris's Dead, Frederick's Dead, Kings Hill, why not? Sister Islands in the USVI, St. Thomas, St. John, Water Island, Jocelyn Dyke, Tortola, BVI, Up Island, Down Island, St. Kitts, Nevis, Antigua, Aruba, Puerto Rico, and the Florida Keys, as the ionosphere is cooperating with the miracle of the magic of wireless radio. It's an incredible technology. You might want to check it out. But we also want to say good afternoon, welcome to the world, because we are broadcasting live over the internet, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch TV, station's own website, WSTXradio.com. You can always get us there. Just click the listen live icon. Apple TuneIn Radio. So, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you guys are having a great week. Hope you've got a great weekend in store for yourself. If you're hearing the sound of my voice live, that means it is a Friday. So welcome to the program, as well as welcome to the weekend. And in fact, today is Friday, September 24th, 2021. And as you know, here on Children of the Sun, our if I did mission statements, my mission statement would be positive energy from a fifth dimensional perspective. And we like to talk to people who are contributing positive energy to the world, as well as locally here on St. Croix. And my guest today certainly falls into that first category. Benjy Sherer is someone who is definitely contributing positive energy to the world from a fifth dimensional perspective. Maybe one of the chapters in his book, which is a great book, by the way, I strongly urge you to get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever fine books are sold. It's called Feelings Free Shadow Work.
Feelings First Shadow Work.
I'm sorry, God. I know. I've read it. I got it posted 3 times, and I'm saying to myself in the car, man, I hope I don't draw a blank on the name of his book. And I got it right in front of me, but the type is smaller than it is at home. Feelings First Shadow Work. I'm sorry. It's let me just I'll just read this to let people know where we're at here. I first became aware of Benjy years back from his YouTube videos. And you know what? If I could find my glasses, I would put them. There they are. I first became aware of Benjy Sherer years back from his YouTube videos, and I was pretty impressed with his approach. But then the hurricanes and the pandemic happened, and my plate got kind of full, so I let him fall to the back. And my mistake, when I recently got back in touch with him and I asked him to come on the show, he graciously graciously sent me a copy of his book, Feelings First, Shadow Work. And wow, I read a lot of books for my line of work that I'm in, which, by the way, is not radio. This is just a side gig. And this book is easily the best that I've read in a long, long time. Innovative, cutting edge, and like well written so that you can understand it, which you would think that would be just normal, but unfortunately it's not. When you read a lot of books like this, the writing leaves a lot to be desired. And so it's well written so that it, not only can you understand it, but you can benefit from the concepts, techniques, and practices that he shares in it. And there's from his bio on his webpage, which you should also check out. You can get the book from Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or I guess probably whatever other book retailer you might use over the internet. Or you can order it directly from him, and he puts there'll be some bonuses with it if you do that. But I want to kind of like give like a general overview of who he is, and for those of you who don't may not have read what I wrote on the post for the show. And this is the bio from his website, which really sums it up well. There's a fine line between emotional awareness and spiritual awakening, and that is where Benjy thrives as a mentor and teacher. Guiding people to emotional mastery, Benjy bridges the gaps between psychology, spirituality, and philosophy. Those three realms are all intrinsically connected in his completely unique and yet intuitively and compellingly simple approach to self-love, unconditional self-love, and emotional mastery. His overall approach is about feelings first, referring to the notion that we can master our emotions directly without the need for deep intellectual analysis, ultra-spiritual practices, or pharmaceutical medications. He teaches people how to connect directly with the emotions and sensations of their body, how to connect directly with the emotions and sensations of the body without fear, guilt, or shame, and allow those feelings to run through them so that they can be truly released. It's about building emotional muscle, not seeking rational answers. As he says, emotional healing is not an intellectual activity. So, and like I would say, like I used to say released all the time, now I would say integrated, and I suspect that you probably do not have any kind of issue with that, because it feels like a release, but we're not like losing the energy, we're integrating. And maybe that's one of the reasons I like your book so much, because like I resonate a lot with everything you say. And I've got like my little pet sayings like get out of your head and into your heart, feeling is healing, the child on the scared to death because of the monster in the bedroom closet, if she just gets up the courage to open the door and look in and see there's no monster, and your monster's under the bed, I think, in your example, but I think we both are coming from like a really similar place. But I wanted like you're a coach, a mentor, a teacher. You work with people one-on-one. I want people to know that. Although I don't know how much longer you're going to be able to do this once people start getting your book and just eventually you have to let the baby go out in the world and stand on its own 2 feet. The book's going to be a bestseller.
Thank you.
It's an excellent book. So Feelings First, Shadow Work. It's where do we start? We could, it's really about the we over in the Western world especially, we over intellectualize and make everything about the mind and mental concepts. We want to turn feelings into stories and mental narratives. And like Eckhart Tolle talks about how if you start going into the past and trying to find an intellectual understanding for everything that every suppressed feeling every feeling you've ever suppressed, you uncover one thing, and underneath that there's something else, and underneath that there's something else, and you can just go forever. It never stops. And he says, just focus on what's happening now. I think you, me, and Eckhart Tolle are all charter members of the Church of What's Happening Now. Focus on what's happening now. He says, there's the past in you. And you talk about, well, you actually you come at it from two ways. Digging out the past from stuff that happened to you 30 years ago doesn't help you with what is going on right now. The pain that you are feeling right now is what you want to deal with. And then also, when you do want to work on those core wounds, that's like the hardest thing you have to do. So you don't want to do that right away as your first thing on your to-do list of emotional healing. Do the easier stuff first and get your muscle strong, and then you can take on the hard stuff. So I think you could kind of like comment on both of those observations of mine, and hopefully say something other than, no, that's totally wrong.
Okay, well, I'm first just so glad to be here. Always happy to be able to share my perspectives and this wisdom with people. And yeah, I mean, you already touched on a lot of tiny topics that like I've got so much that I could start tapping on. So I made a post earlier today in my own Facebook group and on my own Facebook page that says, trying to resolve your painful emotions by analyzing, dissecting them, or solving the problem is like trying to get a bad taste out of your mouth by describing the flavor. And that's pretty much what most of us are doing. I think there's like what I teach or what I talk about a lot is there's one primary subconscious cycle that is constantly taking place underneath the surface where, kind of as you mentioned and pointed out, we are constantly trying to convert our emotions into thoughts, as if we're trying to convert this flavor, like this taste in your mouth, into an intense description. But the words that describe the taste in your mouth are not themselves the taste in your mouth. And no matter how well you can describe it, no matter how much you can analyze it, no matter how much you can trace the neurons firing in your brain at a point when you're eating a super hot, spicy pepper, none of those things are going to help get that super hot, spicy taste of pepper out of your mouth. And if you're dealing with that pain, you're going to need to drink a glass of milk or eat some bread or whatever it is that might help you deal with that pain that's in your mouth at the moment. So this main subconscious cycle, sorry, I'm hearing an echo.
Sorry.
Okay. So this is what generally happens, that we're all, we feel a particular emotion. This will happen. Sometimes you go to bed feeling good. For example, you had a great day, you're happy, you enjoyed your day, you go to bed feeling good, then you wake up the next morning and you're feeling a little stressed, you're feeling a little anxious, you're feeling a little tired, you're feeling a little down, whatever it is. Sometimes it just happens. Now, when we wake up in the morning and we feel a little down, this starts happening, our instinct is to ask ourselves, why do I feel this way? Or if you're living with someone, let's say, a parent, a spouse, roommate, whatever, and you walk up to them and you say, oh, I'm not feeling very well today. And, if you're talking emotionally, not physically, whatever it is, you say, I'm not feeling well today. And this person that you just said it to, their natural reaction would be, okay, why? So I'm sorry to hear that. Why don't you feel good today? Thing is, there is no real reason. You went to bed feeling good. Everything was good in your life a moment ago, 12 hours ago, whatever it was when you went to bed. Now you woke up and you're just not feeling very well. That's all there is to it. It's just an emotion. Now, if we want to go into the subconscious cycles and reasons of why you're not feeling very well right now, maybe you just woke up at the wrong time in your sleep cycle. Maybe it's these past emotions that are running through you to finally get resolved, because your emotional body is always trying to do this healing for you. It's trying to help you by sending up this old unresolved pain for you to deal with. But that's something we can circle back around to. So those are the only real reasons, quote unquote, why you might not be feeling well in that moment. Because nothing has changed since you went to bed the night before and were feeling good. But here you are in the morning, now all of a sudden you're not feeling well, and someone asks you, why don't you feel well? And so our natural instinct and response is to find a reason. We believe that all of our emotions must necessarily be caused in the moment by something outside of us. So when they ask us, why aren't you feeling good right now? We start searching our lives. We look at everything around us. We look at our job. We look at our relationships. We look at our financial status. We look at every possible reason.
But because the mind is like, that's its job, to find what's wrong. Compare and contrast, find what's wrong, judge, right?
Exactly. We've trained our brain to perform this job of problem solving. And this is a defense mechanism that we built up in moments of trauma, because in a moment of intense emotions, when you weren't safe to deal with them, this is how we handle them. In a moment of intense emotional trauma that you don't know how to deal with, that's when your brain clicked on and went, whoa, I am not enjoying this experience right now, and I don't know what to do with this. So there's all of these emotions running through me, and in this particular moment, I'm not safe to feel these emotions. I'm not safe to express these emotions, because if you were to do so in a moment of actual danger and trauma, it would lead to more danger. It's like if you are running away from a lion in the jungle, you don't have time in that moment to sit down and cry, because if you do, you're going to get eaten by the tiger. So when we are in a moment of intense trauma, our brain's job is to click on and shut down the emotions of our heart for a moment in order to keep us safe. And in a moment of danger, in a moment of trauma, that is kind of the best thing that we can do. So what your brain is doing in that moment is it's telling your heart, okay, hold on to this emotional pain, because we're not safe to deal with it right now. And I will come back and deal with this again when we are safe. Seems perfectly reasonable, and that is in fact the best thing to do, because in that moment you're not safe to feel it. The problem is that we never realized this was happening. We didn't understand that we were doing this, so we never come back to deal with it later when we are safe. We told our subconscious mind, we told our heart, okay, hold on to this, I'm going to come back and deal with it later, and then we never do. So what happens is we just keep on piling more and more unresolved emotions on top of this. So when you wake up in the morning and you're not feeling very well for no reason in particular, what's happening, like I said, is these old unresolved emotions inside of you are trying to move through you. They're trying to get taken care of. They're trying to be resolved. And all that we would need to do in order to resolve them is allow yourself to feel them, exactly as you said. I can't remember the exact words you just used, but basically you got to feel it to heal it. So right. As soon as these things start running through you, if you are able to focus in on the emotions, focus in on the feelings and the sensations inside your body without letting them convince you that something is terribly wrong, right, then you can allow this process to actually take place. But when these emotions come up and hit your brain and you actively search for a problem in the outside world to solve, because you think that that's what's going to solve your emotions, then what happens is that's you telling your heart, oh, no, sorry, I'm not ready to deal with this right now. I'm not ready to look inside because I still don't understand what's going on and I still don't know how to deal with this. So instead, I'm going to find a problem in the outside world to attach this emotion to. So the emotion wasn't actually caused by anything in particular in the moment, but your brain's job is to attach that emotion to some actual scenario in your life so that you could then have a problem to solve, because your brain wants to stay in control of this scenario. Your brain wants a problem to solve because it believes that if I solve this external problem, then this bad feeling will go away. But the feeling isn't coming from the outside. It's coming from what's trapped inside of you.
Yeah.
And every time that you search for a solution outside of you, what you're actually doing is avoiding the actual healing that's trying to take place inside of you at this very moment.
Yeah, and the brain is like a problem-solving mechanism, and so it tends to look at everything as a problem to be solved. It's sort of like the old cliche about if the only tool that you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And we're very comfortable. It's like shadow work, and I want you to kind of talk about what shadow work is, because I think people don't understand. I think people do. Shadow work, people tend to think of it as like you puke out your guts all over the floor and then wallow in it for 30 years. And it's because we're afraid of dealing with our emotions. We'd rather think about a problem, even if that gets us nowhere near healing the emotion, because people are so fearful of their emotions. And it's like the little girl with the monster in the closet. If you just open the door, it's like you find out it's no big deal. Just allow yourself to feel it, and that's healing, and that's how you process the emotion, and get your the brain in your head, the brain in your heart, and the brain in your gut all working together. And I get that. You're not writing this book. When I read this book, I'm saying to myself, I'm not reading the book of somebody who. I know your academic background. You got master's degrees in philosophy and world religion, but I'm not reading the book of somebody who's writing from an intellectual understanding. I'm reading a book of someone who went through this himself.
Yeah.
My life is before and after the dark night of the soul. It wasn't until after I fell to my knees that I felt like I had anything worth saying that anyone should listen to. And I think you write from the same source.
Yeah.
So and it's more than just like you were feeling depressed and you tried this and it didn't work. You tried that and you tried this, you tried that, and so on until finally you just stumbled into something that worked. It was like your experience brought forth out of you something new, and that's what you're sharing in this book. So maybe kind of flesh that out for us a little bit.
Okay, so you sort of glossed over a few questions or a few points there, so I'm starting to take notes a little bit so that we can circle back around to anything that we don't touch on immediately, because you mentioned a few things there. You asked me to describe what shadow work is. You touched on multi-dimensional sort of stuff in 5D, which I want to circle back around to. You didn't exactly say that directly, but there's something that you brought up. And you talked about writing from experience versus speaking academically. So
right.
Let's talk about that sort of multi-dimensional thing for a moment. So you said that we want to intellectualize, like we all want to do this, which overall, you and I we're on the exact same page. But what I would say is I don't think that it's that people want to. I think it's that people don't understand. We don't know how to deal with this any other way. It's exactly as you said, that when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So we've been living in, a very sleeping state, if you want to put it like that, before an awakening, before whatever, in a very kind of single dimensional way of looking at ourselves. Now, obviously, it's not a single dimension, depending on if we're talking about physics, if we're talking about spirituality, whatever. There's the 3 dimensions of space, the 4th dimension of time. But what I mean is that we have always looked at ourselves as individual as a singular entity, that everything that we're experiencing is one thing. And that's why we tend to intellectualize everything, because until an awakening of sorts. We're living completely up in our heads. That's the only tool that we have. Our heads, our minds, our intellectuality. And the way that I like to describe spiritual awakening, at least what it was for me, and because especially right now I'm on a mission to really find that line between spirituality and pseudoscience, because as a teacher I want to make sure that I am only teaching things that I can be certain of, and that when it comes to my own spiritual beliefs, that I'm not teaching anything that falls under that category of beliefs, things that I can't like know and confirm for myself. So when we go through an awakening, what I like to describe it as is emotional puberty. So the same way that with puberty, there's these sort of sexual parts of ourselves that remain latent in us until a certain age that then start coming online. Spiritual awakening is about these deeper emotional parts of ourselves that are finally starting to come online again after spending a lifetime actively shutting them down. So that's what kind of leads to the dark night of the soul that people like you and I experience, is that there's all of this stuff that we have built walls around our whole lives in order to keep us safe, in order to allow us to play the human game, if you want to look at it like that. And at a certain point, whether it's due to trauma or emotional abuse or all kinds of potential things, maybe it's an out-of-body experience or a near-death experience or just intense emotions, sometimes even through psychedelics or stuff like that, that wall that we've built up around all of our pain, those defense mechanisms that we have developed to keep us safe and to keep us operating in this world with this mask around the true version of ourselves, cracks open. And what happens at the beginning is there is so much buried pain and so many unresolved emotions moving through us at a time that we shut down. We cannot move on, and that's sort of what causes the dark night of the soul. And as these walls break down and these unresolved emotions start cracking out of us, we start being able to identify the multiple parts of our experience of reality, which you touched on a little bit when you kind of referenced the head, the heart, and the gut. So the way that I express this is there's the thoughts, the emotions, and the sensations. These are the three elements of your experience of reality. There is nothing that you can experience in this world that does not fall into one of those categories or into multiple categories. Like when I'm speaking to you right now, you're hearing the sensation, which is the actual audio, that's the sound that is coming out of my mouth. Then those sounds hit your ears. Those are just sensations. But then once your brain understands them, those are your own thoughts. You're hearing me expressing my thoughts, and they kind of get translated into your own thoughts. So when I'm speaking and you're listening to me, there are already thoughts and sensations on your end, and maybe those spark emotions. But there is nothing that you can experience in this world that does not fall into one of those categories. Everything is either a thought, an emotion, or a sensation. And as we go through this awakening, and as we go through this emotional healing, in particular, the way that I teach it to people, we start learning how to see ourselves as this multi-dimensional being. We're not just a person with all of these things, where there's the experience of thoughts, the experience of sensations, and the experience of emotions, which are all independent experiences. Now, they do affect one another. They do have a sort of cause and effect relationship from one to the other. And these are the subconscious cycles that we need to get a hold of. But we need to start seeing these things as separate experiences. So, like I said, when we wake up in the morning and we're just not feeling very well, we can learn how to identify that emotion as its own thing. Okay, I'm feeling sadness right now. And the old way of dealing with this, when we don't realize that we're multidimensional beings, is to, okay, well, this sadness must be a part of my thoughts and my sensations. It must be a part of my life right now. There must be a reason for it. But when we can start seeing our emotions as, oh, that's just its own thing. That's a thing that's happening right now. then we can stop that emotion from fooling us into thinking that something is wrong, and thereby creating more thoughts around it. But usually the emotion creates more thoughts because we search for a problem. And then here's the real secret. When your brain starts searching for a problem because you're in this emotional experience right now and it wants something to solve, as I mentioned before, usually there is no real problem in your life. But when your brain's job is to search for a problem to solve and there is no real problem, it's gonna find one. It's gonna take anything in your life that isn't perfect, and it's going to attach this emotion to it. So now you have all of these thoughts about, oh no, what's going wrong in my life? And those thoughts will then affect your sensations. It creates anxiety, let's say, which is that turning feeling in the pit of your stomach, or the tightness in your chest, or you put up more defense mechanisms and you tense up in your body. It creates these sensations in your body, that those sensations then convince your heart that there's a real problem here. So that creates more fear or guilt or shame, and then that fear or guilt or shame needs an explanation. So your brain creates more thoughts and attaches that to something else, and then those thoughts create more sensations, and those sensations create more emotions, which create more thoughts, emotions, sensations, thoughts, emotions, sensations. Around and around and around and around we go, because we haven't realized that we are multidimensional, for the sake of putting it that way. There are these multiple elements of our experience of reality, and when we can start recognizing that emotions are just a thing in and of themselves, then we can stop this emotional cycle. So that was one thing. You also asked, what is shadow work? You asked me to describe that a little bit. So as you pointed out, most people think that shadow work means pulling out all of the worst horrible traumas that ever happened to you and diving headfirst into them, to analyze and dissect them and figure out all of the psychological logic behind your defense mechanisms. But that's really not at all what this is about. That's what psychoanalysis is about, if you want to do it that way. But shadow work is really, to put it as simply as possible, it's the process of learning what to do with negative emotions when they come up, so that you can deal with them properly and not hold on to them forever. So the way that I like to express this is, imagine that from the beginning of your life, you've been carrying around a backpack. Now, when you're born and you come into this world, the backpack is empty. So it doesn't weigh anything. It's not dragging you down. It's not having any effect on you as a person. It's just a backpack. Now, this backpack is your emotional body. And every time that you experience a moment of emotional distress in your life, it's like you pick up a pebble. And if you deal with that emotional distress in the moment, if you express it, if you allow yourself to fully feel it, if you allow it to fully move through you, then you put the pebble down, everything's fine. But if you don't deal with it in that moment because you're not safe to, or because you don't know how to, then it's like I said, your brain tells your heart, hold on to this pain, I'll deal with it later when I'm safe. So you take that pebble and you put it in your bag. Now, it's a tiny pebble. And, we can carry a lot on our back. So when there's a single pebble in the bag, you don't notice it. When there's 5 pebbles in the bag, you don't notice it. When there's 10 pebbles in the bag, you don't notice it. But now you're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, and you've got a full backpack of pebbles that you never dealt with. And at a certain point, it starts becoming so heavy that you can't live your life properly anymore. You can't run, you can't jump, you can't dance, you can't experience life at its fullest, because you're carrying around a backpack of all of your unresolved emotional distress. So what shadow work is, at its core, is learning how to pick out the rocks one at a time and put them aside. Now, we don't need to analyze each and every rock, because if you're carrying around this backpack, and there is in fact a reason for each one of the pebbles that you put into your bag. Every single one of those pebbles, there's a story behind it. There's something that happened in your life that you didn't deal with that you put into your bag. But no matter how much you understand the story of each one of those pebbles, It doesn't make the bag any lighter. It
Right.
still weighs a lot. So you can analyze each one of those rocks while they're in their bag, while they're in your bag, as much as you want. It's not going to make it any lighter. It's not going to make it any easier to walk. It's not going to make your life any easier. But when you learn how to experience each of those emotions the way that you should have the first time, without fear, without guilt, without shame, then you get to take the pebble out and put it on the ground again. And if you want to analyze them and to find answers for them, great. It'll be that much easier to analyze them when the pebbles are out of the bag. But while they're in the bag, the answers about why they're there, that's not really what we care about. We just want to put the bag down. We want to put the pebbles down. We want to be able to live our lives. So which do you want? Do you want to understand all of the pebbles, or do you want to put them down? And as we learn how to do this, then your brain can start unraveling itself. You know, it's been resisting all of these answers and revelations. Like, your subconscious mind already understands all of your defense mechanisms. It already understands all of the revelations that you think you need to find out. In fact, most of you listening right now probably already know exactly where your core trauma came from, or exactly, you know, where all of your issues stemmed from.
People are more advanced these days.
Yeah. Well, we at least understand, people remember it, and I fully agree. We're more advanced these days compared to where we were 50, 60 years ago, where, you know, and I mentioned this in my book, that like back in the 60s, when we had to start accepting and understanding that, maybe if my father beat me when I was a child, that impacted my self-confidence and my personality. Back in the 60s, that was something that, like,
The radical new idea.
Yeah, a radical new idea that people didn't want to hear either. All the manly men of that time, like, oh, that's nonsense. I just smacked you around a little when you were a child. Just suck it up and go. Like, so yeah, we have come a long way. So most people now understand where all of this stuff is coming from, at least to some extent. And we don't need to dive any deeper into that. Like I said, your brain already has this understanding. It's just that it can't yet wrap it's weird because I'm talking about the mind. It can't yet wrap its head around them. What I mean is that intellectually you already understand. It's just that you can't fully integrate this understanding until you deal with the emotions around it. It's sort of like, think about all of the, you know, the most basic cliches of this world. Something like love is blind, or money can't buy happiness, or, you know, any of the, you know, the most basic cliches that we've heard in our lives that are in fact the truest things ever said. Like the only thing to fear is fear itself, which is one that I fully believe in. These are all things that we can hear a million times over, that you will never truly understand until you feel it. Love is blind, for example. You can hear that a million times. You can read a million books about how love does not require looks, how love can see past anything. And like, you can read it and you can intellectually understand it. You can have some sort of idea of it. But until you experience that kind of love for yourself, you will never truly understand those words. And that's really what's happening with our emotional and psychological cycles, that deep down, like, you already understand. Your brain already knows all of the intellectual answers that you think you want. It's just that you can't truly comprehend them. You can't truly integrate them. You can't truly just like integrate them into a part of your being until you feel it. So that's what where the you need to feel it to heal it stuff comes in. As you allow yourself to connect with your emotions, as you allow your subconscious to express itself, then all of the revelations and understandings and psychological logic that you want to comprehend about yourself, it will reveal itself naturally. It will just become obvious to you when you have released enough of those pebbles that are in your backpack, when you have raised your consciousness, raise your perspective on your life enough to be able to feel these things and look at them from the top down, then everything will make complete sense. But it's like you can't, see the forest for the trees kind of thing. When you're in the forest, there's only so much that you can see. But, you raise yourself out of the forest and, you look down and you see it for exactly what it is. And that's exactly what's happening with our emotional cycles. As long as you are still allowing these emotional defense mechanisms to take over because you are still afraid and because you still haven't learned how to feel your emotions, then you are never going to truly understand what is happening. So, like, I can take someone who is experiencing, let's say, a lot of emotional defense mechanisms as a result of trauma that they experienced as a kid, and I could sit them down in front of me and tell them, okay, this is where it came from, and here are all the defense mechanisms that you are playing out. None of that is going to solve the problem. It's like, and please, I'm about to use an example that is, I'm using a stereotype to put this. It's going to sound, I don't even want to say this, but like, please understand that I'm just trying to express, in a sense, a point that I don't believe. Like, it's going to sound misogynistic, but I don't actually believe this about women. I'm just saying a stereotype. Have you ever tried explaining to an upset woman why they shouldn't be upset?
I've heard the expression in the history of upset, no one was ever calmed down by being told to calm down. Something
exactly.
Like that.
Exactly. So this applies both to men and women, 100%. I was just kind of using the comedic, stereotypical, past view. So it applies to everyone. So as you were saying, you cannot explain to someone who is in a negative emotion why they shouldn't be feeling a negative emotion, or you can explain it to them. It's not going to change anything.
Right.
So it is only once you allow them and show them how to feel their feelings that then the intellectual answer will make sense. But until then, it's just words. It's not actually helpful. Now, as you mentioned, we are more advanced than we were 60 years ago. So I'm not denying that psychoanalysis and the development of a psychological understanding of who we are as people wasn't an integral part of our collective progression of consciousness. We needed to move from that place from, the 1920s, where all of this was completely buried in us, to the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, where we started understanding the basics of psychology. But now we have, for the most part, most of us here, especially most of us listening to, having these kinds of talks and being on this kind of radio station, most of us have already come to understand intellectually the notion that, oh yeah, if I was beaten as a kid, that probably affects my personality. We've come to understand this stuff, and no more intellectual understanding is going to get us any further in our emotional development until we learn how to feel and resolve and release these things. And once we do that, it all becomes so obvious. Like, I cannot watch a single TV show or movie or anything without seeing all of the unhealthy patterns of all of the characters all the time. And like every interaction is so unhealthy.
And they're teaching that.
Well, are they teaching it, or are they simply they're mirroring, they're telling stories of reality? This is, where most people are at these days. They're not encouraging it. Like, this is what humans are.
It's more of a mirror than you think. It's more of a reactive mirror than a proactive teaching. Well, I guess that's what we do. We mirror, we teach, we learn. We're just constantly learning and teaching each other. And it's a question of, what do you want to learn and what do you want to teach?
Yeah.
And that actually, from the standpoint of like how your book is very practical, you were talking just now about how your mind looks for the explanation, and I think, and then not only does it look for the explanation, it then becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I think I feel nervous because my boss is going to fire me, then if she puts me in charge of an important project, it's not because she values my capabilities, it's because she's setting me up to fail, so she has an excuse to fire me. So we start reinterpreting everything into so that it fits the mental explanation we came up with for why we feel the way we do. And then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy and a vicious circle downward. And in your book, you talk about how instead of trying to change the outer circumstance, change how you feel within and get into a virtuous circle going up, so that the better feeling promotes better actions, which yields better consequences in your real actual life, which makes you feel better, and you start going from success to success to success. And that's like a really, because I know there's people listening to in my audience listening to the show right now saying like all this psychological, emotional stuff, how does that help me today in my life? And it's a very practical application of how it makes your life better. And if you buy his book now, 10 years from now, you will be in a much better place than you will be 10 years from now if you don't buy his book. Boy, I'm really putting that hammer on. So yeah, talk about that a little bit, like this virtuous circle from success to success.
Yeah, I think that's so. I try and pull it a little back from there. I don't exactly love the coaches or the teachers that promise grand success in every area. Like, it is true, but I like to preach. I like to teach a little bit more of just the practical elements of this. So I do believe that, yes, all of this stuff will lead to more and more success in your life. I just don't like to talk about things that way. The sort of law of attraction coaches that promise that, like, oh, you'll have everything that you want in your life. I do believe it. I just don't kind of like talking about it in that sense. I like to talk at a more practical level. But yes, what we are talking about here, really. And so on top of my book, Feelings First Shadow Work, there's a second book that kind of partners with it called 10 Mind Hacks for Quicker Emotional Healing. And in that book, chapter 10 is all about manifesting in the law of attraction. And as I mentioned a bit ago, I'm kind of on this mission to find the line between spirituality, practicality, and pseudoscience, to know exactly what I can teach and what I can't without, and feeling completely good about it. So in the book, in that chapter 10 of 10 Mind Hacks, I talk about manifesting in the law of attraction. And on the one hand, I give my sort of metaphysical, multidimensional view of what I think is happening, presuming the spiritual version of this is real. But I also talk about the practical elements of it doesn't matter if the spiritual elements of this are real, because at a practical level, this makes sense. So let me circle back around to that. I'm going to talk about manifesting and the practical elements of all of that in just a moment. But I do want to say quickly, because as I started going through my spiritual awakening, it was that kind of logic that I needed to have in order to allow myself to pursue these things, because I was still very resistant to these spiritual kinds of concepts. And most of what I discovered, or most of what I started learning, there needed to be a practical reason behind it so that I could allow myself to dive into this. For example, the first notion that I came across, and the notion, like the first kind of spiritualish notion that I needed to accept intellectually, even though it seemed a little woo-woo, a little spiritual, a little touchy-feely, was unconditional self-love. And these words,
we need to get into that.
Yeah. So these words came to me from a spiritual source. For any of your listeners, I was on the twin flame journey. It's a whole thing. It's all weird. It's all messed up. And the twin flame journey, I came across this Facebook group called Twin Flames Unconditional Self-Love Community, something like that. The whole twin flame thing, that's a story in and of itself. But as soon as I saw those words, unconditional self-love, they really hit me. And on the one hand, it seemed very, like, I was hesitant to accept it because of the source where it was coming to me from. It was this twin flame thing, which was very spiritual, very woo-woo, very hard for me to accept or wrap my head around. But I was able to understand that it doesn't matter where this idea came from, because logically, intellectually, practically speaking, unconditional self-love is simply a great thing to learn and understand. I got that. It doesn't matter if it comes from a spiritual sense. It doesn't matter if any of the spiritual concepts around this are real. Unconditional self-love can only benefit my life. So I allowed myself to dive a little more into it. Same with when I did my first past life regression. Now, at the time, I didn't believe in past lives. If you ask me now, I'd say I'm 70, 80% certain that, like, yes, I've lived before. There's so much that we could dive into that, like, I'm fairly certain, but I can't know for sure. But when I first did my first past life regression, I didn't believe in past lives, but I allowed myself to do the exercise and to do this because my practical thinking was, it doesn't matter if past lives are real, because this can simply be a helpful way of me tuning into my subconscious. My subconscious is going to tell me a story, and this story might help me heal, and that's all that matters. So all of the spiritual concepts that I teach have practical reasoning and practical effects behind them. And it's only once you start diving so deeply into the practical effects of these things that it starts becoming hard to deny the spiritual elements of it also. So we move through the practical elements towards the more spiritual conceptions, and that's how we raise our consciousness. So talking about manifesting and the practical elements of these positive cycles that we want to get ourselves into, like I said, it doesn't matter if the spiritual element of manifesting and law of attraction are real, because what's really going on is the law of attraction is based on a paradox. It's based on the idea that if you want to make the law of attraction work for you, you have to not try and make it work for you. Right. It's based on, like, if we're talking about the spiritual elements of the law of attraction, here's what it teaches. It teaches us that if you want to bring something into your life, whether it's love, whether it's money, whether it's friendships, then here's how you have to do it. First, you have to learn how to feel that feeling right here, right now, even though you don't have that thing in your life. So if you want to experience financial abundance, you need to learn how to feel financially abundant right now. If you want to attract love into your life, you need to learn how to feel love in your heart right now. That's step number one. Learn how to put yourself into the emotional frequency of the thing that you want to experience. Step number two is release the importance of that thing. So they say that the vibration of wanting something is the exact opposite vibration of having that thing. So if your goal is to bring this thing into your life, then you need to feel it right now, and you need to let go of that want, that need, that desire for it, because that desire carries the opposite energy of having it. And here's the real secret. Once you have attained that, once you learn how to feel love in the moment right now, and you've released the importance of having a loving partner in your life, then you're just happy. You're living your life, and you're in love. It's great. It doesn't matter anymore whether or not you experience that thing. And from there, now you can take appropriate action. Now you can act towards others in a loving way, in a way that invites people to open up to you. Now you can stop putting out this desperate energy. So it works at a very practical level, where when you are operating from fear, the example that you gave, that, like, oh, my boss doesn't respect me and they're just going to give me this thing to keep me busy kind of thing, then your boss might actually give you the assignment of your life. This thing that could change your career and change your life and could be the launch pad to everything that you ever wanted. But when your boss gives you that thing and you're looking at it like, oh, this is just busy work that she's giving to me and she doesn't care about me or whatever, then you are not going to jump on that opportunity. You're going to do the bare minimum of work. You're going to approach it with a negative attitude. You are going to do a bad job, and you are not going to take full advantage of this thing. Or it could be that, someone is going to offer you an opportunity, and this opportunity could be the very thing that makes you $1 million. But if you are living your life operating under the belief that you are always going to be poor and that nothing is ever going to work out for you and that you are always going to be miserable, then when someone makes you this offer and gives you this opportunity, you are going to presume that it's nonsense. You're going to assume that this person is trying to take advantage of you. You are not going to willingly accept this thing. Like someone can offer you a winning lottery ticket today. And if you truly believe that you are always going to be poor and that the world is awful and that everyone hates you, then you are going to assume that this guy is trying to con you. And you're going to take that lottery ticket and you're going to rip it up and you're going to throw it in his face and you're going to walk away. But if you live your life from a place of love, from a place of openness, from a place of acceptance, then when that person gives you this winning lottery ticket, at least part of you is going to say, oh, maybe this is real. I'm going to take the lottery ticket and I'm going to go to the 7-Eleven and I'm going to try and cash it in. We're going to see what happens. So your attitude affects the way that you experience every moment of your life. And then your perception of that experience affects the way that you will respond and react to every offer that is taking place. So you need to take action. There's this cycle of co-creation between your inner world and your outer world, where, yes, you can look at that as this spiritual notion of we are multidimensional spiritual beings and we are co-creating, which I do believe, even though I'm saying it in this weird sort of spiritual way as if it's nonsense. I do believe it to be the case, but you can look at it that way. Or you can look at it from the very practical point of view that, like, if I am a miserable person, then I am going to treat people poorly and they are not going to give me the right offers. They are not going to be there for me. Or I am also going to hang out with people that resonate with where I'm at right now. Alcoholics will tend to hang out with alcoholics. CEOs will tend to hang out with CEOs. So they say that, very common expression in all of these sort of motivational communities that, like, if you hang out with four unsuccessful people, you will be the fifth. If you hang out with 4 millionaires, you will be the fifth. And this all stems from your beliefs and your attitudes and your defense mechanisms and your energy and your emotions. Because
kind of getting back to what I was saying before about what are we learning and teaching to each other.
Yeah, exactly. So this all comes from, it all has a practical effect. So we need to first take control of our emotions and learn how to act and operate from this place of love if we ever want our external world to change. So you brought up a moment ago what I say that, like, okay, if we want to change our external circumstances, we need to change the internal one, because there is this cycle of co-creation that's going on from the inside to the outside. Your energy and your attitudes and your beliefs and your emotions affect your responses and your reactions and your actions, which then affect your beliefs and your emotions and all, and it keeps going around and around in circles. Now, with this co-creation happening, one is always affecting the other. And if we want to change our lives, which is easier to change? You cannot control the external world as much as you can control the internal one. But when you change the internal one, then you start taking the right actions, which actually lead to changing your external one. So the more that we can focus in on ourselves, the more that, A, we learn how to enjoy every moment all that much more, and we learn how to be okay with whatever we're experiencing in our lives. So even before anything in your external world changes, you're already feeling better, you're already happy, your life is already better. And then because you are feeling better and life is better and you are happier, then you start taking different action, which results in different experiences. And around we go.
Yep. Well, I'd like you. Are you okay to keep going? You want to take a break? Okay, good. I mean, we can take like a 5 or 10 minute break and then resume.
That's fully your call, but I'm good.
Okay, because I'm always thinking about, like, one good thing about commercial breaks is they let your audience go, like, stretch their legs, use the bathroom, and do something.
So let's do it. Let's give them a break.
Yeah, let's give them a break. We'll We will. Let me get my. We'll take like a 10-minute break. Yeah, and you're listening to Children of the Sun, WSJX AM 970. I'll leave the Facebook running, but I won't be here. You don't have to be. I can mute us. I just don't want to like make a two-part program where they have to find part one and part two. So we'll just um, we'll mute our mics and we'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back and resume. All right, you're
Okay.
listening to Children of the Sun, WSJX AM 970. I'm your host Ray Bratcher, and I'm here with Benjy Sherer, author of Feeling's First Shadow Work, a great book on advanced healing principles. It runs the gamut, everything from practical to highly spiritual, and maybe we'll get into that on the other side of the break. You're on WSJX AM 970, and we will be right back. B2. All right, I'm gonna. Um. Okay, I'll get us off. I'm gonna keep it running. I'm just gonna mute the mics. Mute my. Okay, we are coming back here on WSTX AM 970, Children of the Sun. My guest today is Benjy Sherer, author of Feelings First, Shadow Work. Two books, actually, also 10 Mind Hacks. Welcome back to the program. You're listening to Children of the Sun here on AM 970 WSTX. Welcome back, Benjy.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes. Oh, yeah, and like one thing I don't want people to do is like put your book in a box, because it's for example, did you see the Gaber Mate trauma documentary put out by the Science and Non-Duality folks?
I can't say that I have.
Okay. Well, it's so one of the things that I want that we want to talk about, that I want people to understand, is like when you're talking about trauma, people might be thinking this is like only if you were horribly abused, like you had a Joan Crawford mom who was putting cigarettes out on you. But just growing up is traumatic for most human beings, because it's like how we interpret things. As a child, a minor thing can seem like a major thing, and it's trauma is just if you suppress it.
Yeah.
If whatever comes up, you suppress it, that's considered trauma. So I want people, first of all, to not think that Feelings for Shadow Work is something they should only be interested in if they had a horrible childhood.
Yeah.
And the other thing, though, is that there are people who are fairly conscious and might think that I don't want them to think your book is not for conscious, advanced people on a far along the spiritual path, because you also address very advanced souls. In fact, one of the early things that you say in your book that I liked was you talk about like part of this virtuous circle we were talking about before the break is getting to the realization, getting out of victim consciousness and realizing how much control you have over your life. But then actually, eventually you realize that you don't have any control over your life, but it's from a higher perspective. It's like a complete surrendering to God, or a higher source, or your higher self, or however you want to put it. In that complete surrendering, you realize your powerlessness, but it's life force moving through you in a positive way instead of you feeling like a victim. So that's like an advanced understanding that you kind of foreshadowed in the early part of your book. So I just want people to you're a complicated man, and you have a complicated book, but it's written simply. But it's helpful. I don't want people to say, that's for people like that and it doesn't really apply to me. It's hard. As I read your book, I'm like, unless you're dead, probably, maybe this book would not apply to you. But otherwise, if you are breathing, and, in breath work, we like to say, who is this for? If you have a belly button, you should do this. So if you have a belly button, you should buy this book. So maybe see if I've sparked off any things that you want to talk about with that, any ideas from there that you want to get into.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, you definitely, you touched on a few topics there. So again, I sort of wrote down a few notes of things that we can sort of chat about. So I think the first thing that I want to sort of touch on is, you mentioned even for highly conscious people, or the real spiritual ones, and even they need this kind of thing. I think that a lot of the times it is especially the conscious and spiritual people that need this stuff, because we all have this habit of, when we experience our spiritual awakening, we try and launch towards the ultra spiritual concepts, and we don't really progress and grow into them the way that we should. So a lot of people have this habit of spiritual bypassing, which is kind of using our spiritual understandings and our spiritual beliefs to avoid having to do this real work. Like, people experience an awakening and they kind of cling on to this idea that we are multidimensional spiritual beings having a human experience right now, which I do believe and I hold true, but they don't understand that between the practical world and the spiritual world is your emotions. as you mentioned in my, like, as you read from my bio, there is a very fine line between emotional awareness and spiritual awakening. And as I described spiritual awakening earlier as emotional puberty. So without developing these emotional skills first, people tend to get lost in the spiritual realm of things. And this is also when a lot of us kind of get sucked into conspiracy theories and into some really sort of dark narratives about, you know, we're all in this spiritual war kind of thing. We get lost in these higher dimensional spiritual concepts where, you know, we really lose track of reality a little bit. And I think that a proper spiritual awakening is about, it's not about leaving this world behind and now all of a sudden living life as like, you know, just disconnecting from this reality. It's about learning how to live in this reality with the knowledge that we are actually more than just our bodies, with the knowledge that we are multidimensional spiritual beings having a human experience right now. But our experience needs to still be grounded in physical reality. So they're like, physics still rules the physical world. Right. Having a spiritual awakening does not negate that. But we need to learn what is, like, it's kind of about shifting your perspective about what this life is really all about. You know, before any kind of spiritual awakening, before any kind of emotional awakening, it's very easy to prioritize all of the three-dimensional things in our lives. Like, this is where greed comes into play, because until a spiritual awakening of sorts, it seems like all that matters in this world is power and money, because we're not taking care of the health and wellness of our heart and of our soul. So people are willing to cause pain to others and kill others and do all sorts of horrible things in this world for the sake of power and money. But after a spiritual awakening, or once you start connecting to your heart, your soul, whatever you are, your emotions, you start realizing that that's actually harmful to you. So we need to learn how to tap into our emotions so that we can then develop our spirituality properly. So yes, this stuff that I teach applies to absolutely everyone on this planet. The stuff that I teach is, the way that I like to describe it, it's like diet and exercise for your emotional body. These are all of the most basic emotional skills, tools, wisdoms, and techniques that all of us should be living our lives by, but never did, never learned, because we didn't realize that, you know, emotions are their own thing. We didn't realize that there is more to ourselves than this physical world. We've been living in this kind of like strict Newtonian view where everything that exists is strictly physical, and therefore our priorities were organized in a certain way. And so for people that go through a spiritual awakening but don't do this emotional healing work, those are the ones that get lost in darkness for a long time, that really talk about, you know, demons and terrible experiences and things like this, or who just completely lose touch with reality and, you know, end up going a little crazy. Now, I went a little bit crazy during my own awakening, my own experience. And there were lots of things that, like, there's a lot at this point that I can't deny, nor would I want to, that I can't deny is true about, you know, the spiritual elements of reality. But there are also a lot of things that I came to believe while I was in that most intense spiritual awakening state that I have now come to see, simply weren't true at the practical 3D level. So you can kind of believe what you want about the spiritual side of things, but you need to understand how it is different from what is happening on this plane of existence. You need to understand the interaction between the various dimensions of who we are in order to have a full concept of this. So as I said, physics rules the physical world, and no amount of spiritual awakening is going to negate that. And if you allow your spiritual awakening to disconnect you from reality to that extent, then you are going to get lost. And you're not going to achieve the real growth that this spiritual awakening is meant to push you towards. You're going to become very egoistic about, oh, I'm awakened and people around me aren't, or the whole, like, I'm smarter and more evolved than everyone else. This is when you develop this pride and this ego about who you are as an awakened being that then reinforces this duality inside of you, because you are seeing yourself as different or better or separate from everyone else around you, which is the very opposite of the lesson that we are meant to be learning. We're all one. We are all going through this same journey. We are all part of the same singular consciousness. But until you learn how to handle your emotions properly and how to truly live from a place of unconditional self-love and unconditional love for others, then you're going to slip into these same sort of cycles. And there are levels and layers to this. So before any kind of spiritual awakening, you're separate from people in this way. And then you experience a spiritual awakening and you're separate from people in this other way. Right. And we need to learn how to bring these various dimensions of reality together. And I think that, like, people don't understand that the kind of thinking and logic and analysis that we use in our pre-awakened state does not apply in an awakened state. You can't think about things the same way. You can't apply this dualistic logic to your spiritual beliefs. It's not like, you know, in philosophy, they teach logic, like logic statements. If A, then B. And if not A, then not B. That kind of dualistic thinking, or the kind of, you know, analysis that we use in our day-to-day lives, doesn't apply to the spiritual lessons that we're learning in the same way. We need to learn how to think multidimensionally, or to put it in Nikola Tesla's words, if you want to understand the secrets of reality, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And when you learn to think in terms of energy and frequency and vibration, then there is no duality the way that we look at things. Paradoxes get resolved and we get to see things from a different point of view. So I'll pause there in case you have any thoughts about that.
Well, you know, yeah, I think that it's like we have a lot. You know, we have the QAnon conspiracy people and pro-vax, anti-vax, pro-Trump, anti-Trump, big lie, rigged, all this stuff. And sometimes I think that, like, people want you to take sides and to choose who's right and who's wrong, and that's just very dualistic. And I think the real test is, can you have unconditional love for someone, even if you completely disagree with what their position is, but still, you know, but still have unconditional love? And then when I see people who are taking a hardcore stance and they know they're right, and you just haven't done your research and you need to find out the truth, and it's coming from a place of anger, and I'm thinking they need to be doing your emotional healing work to heal that anger, and then they could not be in such a dualistic place and be and come at it from past the test, which I really think is regardless. It's not the test. The final exam is not, did you figure out the truth about the vaccine or not? The final exam is, did you figure out the truth about unconditional love or not? So, and I think, yeah, it would be good to have these things available to us for healing ourselves, not, you know, healing ourselves of all these understanding and healing these negative emotions.
Yeah. So you're absolutely on the money. This narrative of the spiritual war that we're in is just reinforcing this victim/victor mentality. So whichever side of it you think you're on, if you're on a particular side of a war, then you've missed the point of this spiritual awakening. We're not in a war. We're all trying to evolve together. And, you know, we're sort of taking a tangent here and taking a left turn, but I think it applies, and it's one of the biggest lessons that I teach people that everyone needs to understand, is that all bad behavior comes from pain. Every way in which you are judging or attacking or being cruel to others comes from pain. Because, look, the foundation of everything that we need to be doing, the foundation of a good and happy and healthy and successful life is unconditional self-love. All that we want is to be happy, to be at peace, and to, feel comfortable as who we are. And it is impossible to be cruel to someone else while fully loving yourself, because we are naturally empathic at our cores. Like, it is just an obvious and true fact about humanity that we do not want to cause pain to others. It is a known fact that, I don't know the actual percentage, but let's say 90% of soldiers, even in a war situation when it's life or death, don't actually shoot to kill. They shoot above the heads of their enemies because it's not within our nature to take life. Or if you imagine taking a 4-year-old boy who has had a happy life so far into the woods and forcing him to shoot a deer. A happy and healthy child who has grown up properly without any real abuse is going to be traumatized by this. We all know this. It's obvious to us that a 4-year-old doesn't want to cause pain to things unless they themselves have been caused pain already. So when we are cruel to someone else, when we are causing pain to someone else, we are shooting neurons down the pathways of fear, of anger, of guilt, of aggression, and those things cause us pain. We are cultivating fear and anger and guilt inside of ourselves. And here's the real secret. I've said that phrase a few times today, here's the real secret, which is true. When you are angry at someone, that anger lives inside of you. You are angry. Now, you can justify your anger all you want, but do you want to be angry? Or do you want to be happy? And people do this all the time. They justify their anger. Like, oh, I was right to be angry because this person cut me off in traffic and because he flipped me off. Or I'm right to be angry at this person because they cheated on me. And like, great. You are correct. You are justified in being angry. But do you want to be angry? Is that something that you want to justify? Are you enjoying this anger that you are going out of your way to defend? Do you want to justify your anger, or do you want to overcome it? So whenever we are angry at someone, we're shooting neurons down particular pathways in our brain that is cultivating this fear, this separation, this pain inside of us. So it is impossible to be cruel to others while fully loving yourself. All of our defensive and aggressive actions come from pain. So, number one, it's very important to notice that in and of yourself. Whenever you are getting triggered, whenever you're getting angry at someone, oh, this isn't an enjoyable experience and this isn't helpful for me. When you notice that, okay, now you can stop focusing so much on the thing that triggered you and instead focus on what is inside of you that got triggered, so that you can learn to let that go and to act better. That's number one. Number two is to recognize that if this is true for you, it's also true for everyone else. So when someone is being cruel to you, they are in pain. Necessarily, because it would be impossible for them to be cruel to you if it wasn't the case. A happy, healed, whole, and healthy person cannot cause pain to someone else without necessarily causing pain to themselves. If you take a 4-year-old and force him to shoot a deer, he is going to experience a lot of pain. And when we recognize that everyone's bad behavior comes from pain, hopefully you can start recognizing also that it makes absolutely no sense to get angry at someone for being in pain. And now we can start settling in. Oh, wow, my anger is a result of my pain and I don't want to do this anymore. And here's this person who's being angry at me. They are in pain. So why am I getting angry at them? Why am I getting defensive? I'm only getting defensive because of my own insecurities and these things that they're triggering inside of me. But really, I should have compassion for this person, because someone who is able to cause that much pain to someone else is necessarily hurting a lot inside of themselves. Where this gets complicated, though, and this is where, some of your more spiritual listeners will already know of this narcissist versus empath dynamic that we talk about. This is where it gets really tricky, because firstly, I don't really buy into that narcissist versus empath duality. I think that everyone deals with their pain in a certain way. And those that we call narcissists are simply those who are dealing with their pain by putting up walls. And those that we call empaths are those that deal with their pain by desperately seeking approval and love from others. I was more on the empath side. And when we are more on the empath side and we're learning how to deal with our emotions, what happens is we're getting triggered by people that we sometimes call narcissists, and it becomes very frustrating for us because, look, we're the ones that are being kind and being loving, and here are these people that are being very cruel to us. Why am I the one that has to do the inner work here? Well, it's because the people that we call narcissists are incapable at this moment of doing so. They've put up all of these walls around their pain. They don't realize that they are in pain. They're in pain in a way that, like, look, when you truly awaken, when you truly heal yourself and allow yourself to feel the fullness of love and happiness and joy inside of you, then you recognize all of the sort of darkness, all of the lower emotions that you were living in this whole time. The people that haven't yet to experience an awakening, or the people that we sometimes call narcissists, can't even see it yet. They don't recognize that they haven't experienced true love in decades. They haven't experienced true joy in decades. They don't recognize that they are shut off from their emotions. They've done such an amazing job of building up these walls and building up these defense mechanisms that they don't notice it. And that's where things get a little tricky, morally speaking, because here are these people that are actually in a lot more pain than we are. The people that we call narcissists are technically in a lot more pain than the people we call empaths. But the people we call empaths, when they are in this dynamic, are displaying a lot more pain and a lot more sensitivity than the narcissist. But what is happening in that moment is that the person we call the empath is actually connected to their emotions, able to feel love, as well as able to feel true pain and, to really feel the effects of the way that these people are being cruel to us. So yes, in a sense, we are experiencing more pain in the moment, but the person that we call a narcissist is so disconnected from their emotions that they can't feel either. Or they do in fact feel the pain, but they don't realize it. So they're living in this closed off world where that's like they can only feel the tiny emotions. We're living in this way too open world where we're feeling way too much of everything. And the real solution is somewhere in the middle. It's, Buddhism, the middle way kind of thing. So the people who are truly being cruel to others are so lost. They are so disconnected from who they are as humans that one day when they wake up, oh my God, it's going to be a floodgate of everything. It's like, a heroin addict or an alcoholic or whatever in the moment is not capable of truly accepting and understanding the harm that they are doing to themselves with their addiction. But when they finally overcome their addiction, they're able to look back at their lives and go, oh my God, I can't believe I did that to myself for 20 years. I can't believe I allowed myself to live in that space. And that's where cruel people, narcissists, are living. They're in this place of they're so blocked off that they don't realize the self-harm that they are doing to themselves in every moment. If you're the type of person that gets really angry and, in traffic, if you deal with road rage, you currently don't realize how much damage that anger is doing to you. You think that yelling and flipping the person off and shouting at them and honking when you drive by them is releasing your anger in a, pleasant way. But you don't realize that, look, every minute of every day, you are programming your brain. And when you allow yourself to slip into aggression and rage in the little things, because you're in traffic right now, you are programming your brain to do the very same thing any other time you get triggered. So when you allow yourself to get angry in traffic, you know what else is going to happen? You're going to get angry at your wife or your husband. You're going to get angry at your kids. You're going to get angry at your parents. You're going to get angry at your boss. And as we were talking about earlier in this session, When you act that way, your life becomes worse because you push away people that you love. You push away good opportunities. You push away all of the great things that could happen in your life. And by pushing them away, now your life seems worse. And now you feel like you have more reason to get angry. So now you get angry again in traffic and you create this cycle and you don't realize all of the damage that you are doing to yourself in your life. So we have to understand, I think, like I said, and I do mention this in Feelings First Shadow Work in the book, that this is the first piece of wisdom that everyone needs to come and accept, that it is impossible to be cruel to others without causing yourself harm. And when we can understand that, when we can start recognizing that it makes no sense to be angry at someone for being in pain, including yourself, then we can start putting aside the judgment a little bit, and we can start learning how to connect to our emotions and to just deal with the fact that everyone on this planet is in a lot of pain and has no idea how to deal with it. And that's what Feelings First Shadow Work is really all about.
Right, cool. And so you, a couple of times now, you've referred to like firing neurons down the path, and firing neuron. I mean, I think of it as like we when we allow ourselves to get angry, for example, or any kind of negative emotion, it like the neurons, it's like a track in the brain that just gets like worn in, grooved in, and it becomes easier and easier to go down that track. So, and then you wind up getting, road rage turns into angry at your wife or angry at the waitress or whatever. And we get in the habit of that, and that, but that brings us to what I want to it's where we've got about 20 minutes or so left in the show, and I really wanted to get back into self-love needs to be unconditional, and people will think that's like you must be a narcissist. That's really selfish. But unconditional self-love is what, as you've kind of been hinting at, alluding to, and foreshadowing, unconditional self-love is what it makes it. If you love yourself unconditionally, you cannot be cruel to another person. And I think that's a important distinction that maybe it would be good to cover that before we have to say goodbye.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of already what I've just been talking about for the last 5 or 10 minutes or so. But thank you. Like it's good for us to point this out very specifically, that as you mentioned, you can't, like, it is unconditional self-love, as like a lot of people think that means, oh, well, I can be selfish. I can focus just on myself and I can, like screw everyone else because my own self-love is all that matters. But as I've been pointing out, you cannot love yourself fully while being cruel to others. So unconditional self-love will be about being kind to others, being generous to others. Now, we have to do it in a way that self-love comes first, meaning that you will never give yourself away in self-harming ways to people who don't respect you, who aren't there for you, who don't care for you. You need to put up boundaries against unhealthy behavior and against the things that don't serve you. But beyond that, you need to be unconditionally kind to others. You need to be unconditionally loving to others. And here's one of the big things. When you do set up boundaries against behavior that doesn't serve you, you need to do so in a loving, compassionate, and kind way. So if you are in a toxic relationship where this person is being very cruel to you, and I just recently, in the last week, actually finally had to cut someone out who I loved for a long time and who I've stuck with her for a long time, trying to help see her through, but her alcoholism eventually kind of got the better of her and it became too much and I had to kind of let her go. Um, when you cut someone out or when you walk away from behavior that doesn't serve you, you have to, as much as possible, do so in a loving, kind, and compassionate way. Because if you don't, then you are causing yourself harm and pain in the moment. So, and you're cultivating that fear and that guilt and that anger inside of you. So when you are separating yourself from someone who is toxic, there are two ways to kind of do this. You can get very angry at them and say, you know, screw you, you are a terrible person, you're being very cruel to me, and you're being, you know, awful, and I don't want to deal with this anymore. And like, you know, you could hurl insults at them, and you can, however you want. While you're doing that, you are actually being very defensive. You are actually being very, you are triggered in that moment. And that trigger, those aggressions, that is something inside of you to be dealt with. That's option A. Is you can get really angry at them and, you know, flip them off and put all of the blame, blah, 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 blah. Or you can say, look, I'm sorry, I can't deal with this anymore. I love you. You're a beautiful person, or, you know, whatever it is. But those are two very different scenarios. You need to put up boundaries against behavior that doesn't serve you, but we need to do it in a way that we're not succumbing to our own anger, to our own negative emotions. We need to do so from a place of self-love. And when you're getting angry at someone, that is not a place of self-love. So unconditional self-love is the foundation, because unconditional self-love, as we've just been talking about, naturally and necessarily leads to love for others. But the opposite is not true. If unconditional love for others is your foundational rule, and if that unconditional love for others is unrestrained by unconditional self-love, then you will eventually drain yourself and you will have nothing left to give to the world. So the way that I express it is, it's basically like when you're on an airplane and the oxygen masks come down. You have to put on your own mask before helping people around you. But as soon as your mask is on, yes, go and take care of everyone around you. So unconditional self-love leads to being of service. It leads to being kind. It leads to generosity, because unconditional self-love is about the state of your soul, the state of your heart. And you want to be the kindest, most loving, most compassionate, most generous, most of service person that you can be. But in order to do that, you need to love yourself. So self-love creates love for others, but unconditional love for others, unrestrained by self-love, leads to self-destruction. So that's kind of the paradox that we need to get over.
Well, yeah. So, talk about how unconditional self-love can lead to universal love for others, but you can't. It doesn't work the other way. Universal love for others does not lead to unconditional self-love.
Well, that's
unconditional love for others. Yeah, unconditional love for others. You can't do it the other way.
Exactly.
You become like what's the word? Like doormat. You just get used up.
Yeah, that's it. Martyring yourself for others is not healthy.
Martyr. That was the word I was looking for.
It's not helpful to anyone. An event like, and you become resentful, you become angry, you lose all of your energy. If you want to be able to give the best of yourself to the world, you first need to develop the best of yourself. You need to bring yourself to that highest point. And look, if we're also talking on the spiritual level of things, like, we live in a world of abundance. So we need to get past all our limiting beliefs where, like, there's only so much happiness to go around, there's only so much love to go around, or there's only so much money to go around. Like, no, you can live your best life. And the more that you, like, especially if we're talking about this on a spiritual level, we're talking about, you know, frequency, vibration, all that sort of stuff. Our goal collectively is to raise the vibration of consciousness of everyone on this planet. So if you want to raise up the people around you, you need to rise up. You need to be at that higher level. You need to be operating from the place of love and joy and bliss and enlightenment in order to pull others up from the bottom. But when you're martyring yourself for others, that doesn't actually come from love. That's really a cry for help. It's really your way of trying to shore up your own insecurities and your own lack of self-love by giving yourself so much to others that you're hoping that they are going to give you back the love that you should be giving to yourself. That is the mentality at which that we usually call ourselves empaths. It's this place where we are so sensitive to our emotions and yet so insecure with ourselves that we give so much of ourselves to others that it completely drains us. And that's where we call ourselves empaths, because we are in this state where, oh, I'm being so drained by the energy vampires around me. And there was a brief period of time where I really resonated with that idea of I am an empath, because I was so drained and so, taken advantage of by people who weren't there for me. And the more that I learned to do my healing, the more that I learned to love myself and put up boundaries against behavior that doesn't serve me while being endlessly compassionate to the people that are causing me that pain, the term empath no longer seemed necessary. I think it's a victim mentality word that we use. Like, empath is only a word that we use when we are in pain as a result of our empathy. But when we learn how to master ourselves, I no longer call myself an empath. I'm just a person. We are naturally empathic at our cores, as I was pointing out. But we use that term empath when we're leaking outside of ourselves, when our ability to sense the emotions of others is causing us pain. But eventually, with enough inner healing, you do become able to sense the emotions of others without taking them on in the same way. And as a teacher, a healer, a mentor, that is a skill that I desperately needed to learn, because look, I get on the phone every day with people who are in the worst of situations, who are, someone that I got on the phone with a week and a half or so ago. As soon as I got on the phone with her, she had scheduled a call with me to talk about this emotional healing and everything that I do. And as soon as she picked up the phone, her first statement was, "Oh, Benjy, I'm so sorry. I meant to cancel this call because, look, I'm just hopeless. You can't help me. No one can help me. I'm just ready to roll over and die." And if I was still in a place where I was allowing other people's emotions to become my own, I wouldn't have been able to help her. But because I'm at a place now where I can sense other people's emotions, I can allow myself to feel them without it becoming mine, I was able to help see her through this. And I'm working with her now. We're trying to, get her on her feet. But we need to master ourselves so that we can best be of service to others. And our goal is just constantly raise yourself up so that you can be of service to others. The way that I word it, for those in your audience who consider themselves light workers, or for those who don't know that term, but who consider that they are here to be of service, that you feel like you have a purpose, you feel like you're here to help humanity and do something. The number one mission, the number one rule for light workers, like, everyone has their own unique mission. Mine is these books and this course and this coaching and everything that I do. Everyone has their own unique mission, but everyone's mission starts the same. Heal yourself and then show others the way. That's it. The more that you raise up your emotional frequency, the more of an impact that you have on everyone else around you. Here's the way that I like to express it. Imagine that we are all fish in an ocean. And right now, the ocean is steady at 15 degrees Celsius. And our job as fish, as light worker fish, is to raise the temperature of the ocean. Now, how do you, as a fish, raise the temperature of the ocean around you? There's only one way. Raise your internal temperature. If you, as a fish, can maintain the temperature of 25 degrees Celsius when the rest of the ocean is at 15 degrees Celsius, then everywhere that you go, you are slightly warming the water around you. Whether you are teaching or guiding or doing anything at all, if you are holding a higher emotional vibration inside of you, then everywhere you go, you are impacting the world around you. Because if there's one ball of something that's at 25 degrees, then that heat is emanating outwards. So that is our goal and our mission. Raise your frequency as much as possible. Raise your emotions as much as possible. And as you do that, it will become impossible for you to be cruel to other people, because doing so brings your emotional state down. And so the more that you raise your inner vibrational frequency, the more that you become that lighthouse for other people, whether you do anything like I'm doing or not. You don't have to be a coach, a teacher, or a mentor to be a healer or to be of service to this world. You can be a cashier at a grocery store and still be an immense light worker by simply being kind and loving to every single person that you come across. Because everyone that comes across your cashier's aisle at that grocery store is in a lot of pain. And you might be the one person in their day that is able to maintain a higher emotional vibrational frequency, so that when they pass through you and you give them that genuine warm smile that no one else has given them that day, when you actually give them a moment's attention, when everyone else is being rude to them and pushing them aside, when you are willing to do that one kind thing by whatever, an example, by, giving them that free candy bar if you can, whatever. That moment in and of itself raises their mood a little bit, raises their emotion a little bit, so that now they can go and be a little more kind to the next person that they interact with. And usually what's happening is we're all doing the opposite thing. Everyone on this planet is doing what I like to call playing the anger game, where we're all insecure and we're all in a lot of pain, and we all are defensive and don't know how to deal with our own issues and our own traumas. And so when someone comes up to us and they are angry at us, or they are frustrated at us because they themselves are in pain and they don't know how to deal with it, their anger triggers our anger. So they get angry at us, and we get defensive and get frustrated, and we get angry right back at them. And then they get angry at us, and we get angry at them, and they get angry at us, and it builds and builds and builds. This negative frequency builds, and then none of it gets resolved, and we go and take it out on the next person. Now let me talk about that anger building concept. Mm-hmm. You've done a bit of radio. You probably know what the concept of feedback is, right? Have you ever experienced feedback while doing your radio show?
Right, yes.
Okay. So do you know what causes feedback?
It's just like the audio from the speakers going back into the microphones, and
exactly,
it's like slightly off. So
it's not about that it's slightly off. It's that, okay, so the sound from the microphone comes out of the speaker. The sound from the speaker then goes back into the microphone. That sound comes out of the speaker, which goes back to the microphone, out of the speaker, back to the microphone 10,000 times in a second. And that frequency builds on itself. So when you put red and red together, it creates more red. But if you put red and blue together, it creates something else. So when you put two frequencies that are the same on top of each other, they multiply. They grow, they expand exponentially. So that sound that came into your speaker once, that came into the microphone once in a second, that then comes out of the speaker and back and out and back and out and back 10,000 times in a second, it grows to such an immense state that it creates that sound that we call feedback. And that's what we're doing with our emotions, and no one is recognizing it. When someone is getting angry at you, that triggers your anger, and those frequencies of anger build on each other, and we produce this negative feedback loop. But what it takes to heal the world is as many of us as possible to learn to stop playing that anger game. When someone gives us anger, if we are able in and of ourselves to transmute that frequency by not getting angry back at them and instead giving them back love, then slowly, the anger that's inside of them can dissipate as well. Now, there's an interesting little phenomenon. I know we only have a few minutes left, so I'm just going to sort of finish this off. But there's a sort of interesting phenomenon that some of you should know as you start working on this stuff. When someone gives you anger and you give them back nothing but love, that can turn out one of two ways. Some people will start settling down. They'll realize, oh, whoa, here's this person that I don't need to be defensive around. They might not notice that consciously, but they're going to be angry at you and you're going to be kind. And eventually they're going to recognize that, look, my anger isn't hitting, and they're going to calm down. Second option is they're going to get really frustrated and really pissed off with you because they are so used to playing the anger game and they're not ready to heal yet that it's going to drive them insane that you are not giving them back their anger. So just be prepared for that. And those are the times at which you will have to put up boundaries and, as best as possible, calmly walk away from the people who are not ready to shift into your new vibration of love.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, you just made me think about something that I never really thought about before. That's a really interesting point because, like the Course in Miracles says, if you respond from the Christ within you, the Christ within the other person will respond back. But Eckhart Tolle says the pain body wants to feed, and if you don't feed it, sometimes it'll get really annoyed because you're not responding the way it's expecting so that it can feed. So, it looks like there's a disagreement there between Tolle and the Course in Miracles that I never really kind of picked up on before. So thank you.
Yeah,
but
welcome.
but that is a good point. If you respond with love, if they can people will calm down or they will really get frustrated. It just depends, I guess, on how dedicated to the anger game they are. And sometimes it's just a matter of just waiting long enough. So I don't know if you can see it or not, but on the screen I've got www.benjysherercoaching.com, and I had the book up, Feelings for Shadow Work, for a while. And so if people want to work with you in coaching, they can go to that website, and I'm sure they can get a hold of you there. And they should, and at the very least, order the book. Tell us if they get it from BenjyShererCoaching.com, there's some bonuses that they get that they don't get if they get it from Amazon. And it's PDF. You can get a hard copy, a PDF electric copy. It's also available as an audio version. Just in case some people might have a preference. I wanted them to know that they can get it in different ways. What are the bonuses that they get if they get it from your site?
Okay, so if you want the hard copy, then you have to get it from Amazon or Barnes & Nobles or some online site, all those print-on-demand kind of ways. You can also get the Kindle version or the audiobook versions over there. But if you're down for the PDF or the web version or the audiobook version, then you can get it from my website, BenjyShererCoaching.com/FFbook. for Feelings First book. And over there, you'll get, if you buy it there, you'll get 10 guided meditations to help you with your shadow work as well, plus 5 manifesting audio tracks, or otherwise known as subliminal programming tracks, to help kind of push you in the right direction. You'll also get access to 1 or 2 of my webinars. And depending on when you go, I don't think it's available right now because I need to make some changes, you might be able to get a discount on my course as well. So just as an FYI, if you're listening to this in the future.
Okay, cool. Great. Thank you very much. I think that's, it's like I said, I can't say enough good things about the book. And also your videos. Like I said before at the top of the show, I first discovered you at your YouTube videos, and there's some little things that you kind of were toying with. And then you go into the book, and it's like, wow, he really went to town with that. So very good. Thank you for joining us on the program. Everybody, thank you for joining us here on Children of the Sun. My guest has been Benjy Sherer, author of Feelings First Shadow Work. And I can't urge you enough, if you have any interest at all in healing yourself, healing the world. I don't know how much percentage of individual and as collective human suffering is due to inauthenticity, I think.
No, it's basically all of it.
Yeah. Let's see. I have to, all right. So everybody, thank you for joining us here on Children of the Sun, and have a great weekend. Get out in nature. and I'm trying to do my professional music exit here. Uh, so let me get the music going. And see you next Friday at 12:30 here on Children of the Sun, WSTX AM 970. Get out, have a good weekend. Enjoy the beach if you live here. And Benjy, thank you very much. And I guess okay. So yeah. So thank you, and I'm going to hit end broadcast now, and we will be complete. Thank you, Benjy.
My pleasure.